Thanks very much. Thanks so much to Work Valley Feminists and the Scottish Feminist Network for inviting us to come and to do what we do quite a lot of, which was chatting. Maggie and I are going to use our session today to talk about, well, a couple of things. First of all, our sort of combined journey with what I colloquially refer to as the madnesses, which began with a 2016 email that I sent to Maggie Gibson, who I did not know that well at the time. But Maggie had actually been involved with the madnesses a little bit longer than I had by that point. Anyway, so we're going to kind of talk about our combined journey, and we're also going to talk about some of the more hidden harms to women who find themselves in the battle defending sex-based rights and sex-based definitions against gender identity ideology. Let's not beat around the bush here. We are being gaslit on a mass scale, and that does have psychological harms. Most people in this room will have experienced some social harms, such as protests, or losing friends, or being scared of losing friends or family members, and also, like Maggie and I have experienced quite a lot of economic harm, shall we say, from getting involved in this too. And obviously, as Lucy Hunter Blackburn and others will attest to, the democratic harms that are being inflicted against women are massive too. So we're going to go on a little bit of a journey through that, sort of back and forth, and Maggie is also going to do some poems. I was going to attempt to do some poems, however, as you can probably hear, I'm quite stuffed with colds, so I might not. But anyway, we are going to go back in time now to a long time ago, pre-2016, and Maggie is going to start telling us how she got involved with all this.
Well, thank you very much, Jenny. And in fact, before all of this, believe it or not, my hair was dark brown. So be prepared, it will come to you too, as some of you got there along with me. But back in early 2015, I was still reader in residence with Glasgow Women's Library, a post which I held for 2.5 years. And towards the end, I'd stopped about the April, and just before that I had been talking to a couple of psychiatric nurses that I knew who worked together on a women's psychiatric ward in a large psychiatric hospital in Scotland. And they were very upset this night when I met them. And it turned out that they had had a man being admitted to psychiatric hospital, and on arrival he decided that he was a woman and insisted he be put on the women's ward. Now these two women I knew very well, and I had actually worked with before, and I actually knew the ward and the women who were on the ward. These women were extremely upset because the women on the ward, many of them, some of them had been there for years, and many of them had experienced sexual and physical abuse from males. Yet this man was insisting that on entry he would go on the male ward. I mean, it was such a nonsense. I mean, women are telling me this. I go, oh, that's outrageous. Obviously that cannot hold. And they actually felt the same. So they offered, when they were told he was insisting, they said, we'll give you a separate room. But no, he wanted on the women's ward with the women's shower facilities and toilets. So the nurses, who were quite senior, really tried to push their case to the point where they were told that they would face a disciplinary hearing if they did not accept this man on the ward. Now, so much has happened since then. That was early 2015, that a lot of these points of law have been due to fabulous work in Scotland by For Women's Scotland, the FVF policy, and many others. That we are getting a lot of this stuff clarified through equality lobby. I mean, at that time, I couldn't have even told you what equality law was. You know, I hadn't been paying attention to many of this. But I certainly was paying attention. And I started to, I also wasn't very well. I was suffering from chronic fatigue. And I started to, you know, was all day on my laptop and was getting involved in social media. And I saw what was going on in Canada, and I thought, aha, this is the same thing. And I started to post onto my Facebook page, which up to then had just been poetry and that type of thing, really. I started to post articles from America and Canada, and very much with, watch out, this is coming our way, kind of attached, but also just wanting people to discuss. I wanted people to discuss. It is a madness. I needed to make sense of it. What on earth? Because remember, when I was born in Scotland, women were second-class citizens. We did not have the same rights. When I was married in Falkirk, women were still second-class citizens. I had the job. I was a teacher, a secondary school teacher. My husband was a law apprentice and earning £500 a year. I was the main wage earner. I also got a flat through my job because they wanted me. A council flat. I was not allowed to sign the lease papers for the council flat because I had just got married. So this is coming in of someone like me who actually had lived through this and experienced being told that I was lesser in some way, and I hadn't been involved with feminism then in uni. I mean, I was a wee working class girl because of Kilsyth, just went home every night to my council house, it was enough that I was at uni without me getting involved in stuff. So, so I hadn't been, but I always regarded myself as a feminist. And it mattered to me. As girls, we fought at school to be allowed to play football. We didn't win, but we got a competition. But it was just all these things all through your life, keep going. So essentially, I was posting on Facebook, encouraging discussion, encouraging debate. This was pre-no debate. And then at a certain point, no debate whacked in. Thank you, Stonewall, what idiots. And suddenly, anybody who didn't agree with you and didn't want rational debate was able to claim you were transphobic and a bigot, and you were being shut down. And of course, that then seeped into my my professional life, but I'll come back to that later.
Yes, so I'll jump in at this point because we're getting to the point where me and Maggie go, hello. So my background had been, by the time it came to sort of 2016 when I got in touch with Maggie, I'd been aware of gender identity ideology ideas for quite some time. But the first time I'd been confronted with it in my professional work, I was a freelance literature promoter. I did a lot of creative writing, education work. I ran my own literature cabarets, and I also performed my own poetry and work as well. But it was in 2013 and I was booked to do a creative writing workshop for an I think it was still LGBT charity at that point. And as we were walking up the stairs, for me about to do the workshop, the organiser said, oh, just so you know, we're trying to normalise everyone introducing themselves with their pronouns. I'll kick things off and then we'll finish with you. Okay, right, let's go in. And I was like, what the hell is introduced with your pronouns? I didn't know what that was. I'd never heard of it. And I could see when we're sitting there and the organiser sort of introduces the workshop, and I caught on to what was happening, but I still didn't really know what the hell was going on, and neither did a couple of the participants. I could see it in their faces, and it was such an atrocious way to start a creative writing workshop. It's not how I would have started one. People felt uncomfortable. And I remember parking that and sort of going, really hope that doesn't happen again. And then within a couple of years, it was everywhere. I was being told as a compere, just so you know, and don't say ladies and gentlemen when you're comparing, I had never been told what to do on a stage before. I was somebody who's self-taught myself and worked my way up in the arts through a non-traditional route. I didn't go and get creative writing degrees and things like that. So I started noticing all of this, and it was also it was directly in my friendship circle in the arts as well, which was very difficult. One of the only other people I had to speak to about it was the writer and broadcaster Hannah McGillen, who is former director of the Edinburgh Film Festival, and she and I had other friends who were not quite as sort of, disturbed by all of this as we were, and had friends in poetry really like tying themselves to knots about it, like clearly really wanting to do the right thing. And to me, I was just like, but it's bollocks. It's foundational, it's bollocks. It doesn't make sense. So one night, after some Malbec, I'd been looking around for other people who might, like Hannah, sort of share my views, and because Hannah wasn't quite in the same sort of professional sphere as me in poetry and literature, which had a lot of crossover at that time with the sort of the Edinburgh Literary Society people graduating and fucking ruining everything. So this has been filmed, isn't it? So I know that must have been fine, because this was sent at 25th September 2016 at 23:23. So I'm not going to read all of it because it is about the length of the Iliad, but I'll have some choice moments because it shows the kind of mindset I was in, because I was genuinely quite frightened by what was happening. Hi Maggie, excuse the totally unsolicited and overly long email written to you late on a Sunday evening after a weekend of thought. I follow you on Twitter and Facebook, and I've been thinking about emailing you for some time. Excuse the fact that I might be reading a lot into a few tweets and posts here, but I'm sensing in you a good ally, someone who's actively vocal about this with no fear. And I go on and sort of set myself.
She's lying on top.
I didn't know she was feared. She didn't seem feared. So I go on a wee bit, and I talk about what my own position is. And my own position is more concise now than it used to be, but summed up with the 3 foundational core beliefs that every single person in this group has, which is that women are materially definable, we're legislatively and culturally important on this basis, and we have the right and should have the freedom to have events like this without getting punched in the thorax. And that really is the 3 core beliefs of all of us in this room. Now, you don't need to be a feminist to hold those 3 core beliefs, but I think to be a feminist at all, you need to have them as some kind of a foundation. So that was where I was at, and I also talked to Maggie in this email about my fear of a few of my friends as well. There was one bit when reading it where I was like, oh God, that actually happened. We were talking about how one of my best friends had recently started sort of experimenting, as I put it in the email, with gender identity ideology. But I'd always been very open with my views with them, and that always seemed to be fine. I never heard my views about this from my friends, but I did say in the email, what I worry about is if I'm more public with this, if they will have to publicly disown me. Sure enough, he did. And so did most of the arts world. People that I've known for years, people that I've mentored from open mic level up to prestigious theatres. And the reason that happened was the first time that I suppose publicly tweeted, because I wasn't a big Twitter person, was when the Skinny Arts magazine published a column by someone who I was aware of because of my friendship with Hannah McGill, actually, because this person is a film critic. Wannabe film critic, who goes by the name Cathy Brennan, and so I saw that the Skinny had published a column by him, and in it he justified his tweets where he'd called for violence against lesbians at London Pride, and it was just, I was in a shit mood that day. Me and my then boyfriend were on the rocks. I was in a really bad mood, and again I'd had Malbec, and so I tweeted a really polite one tweet, and it was the first time I'd ever sort of really publicly done that. That was actually in 2019. It took me a while to get public with it, though I'd never heard my views. And after that, my entire life went completely bonkers. But anyway, back to Maggie, because Maggie had experienced the delights of some of my hounders before me.
Well, I got involved in this carry on with the Skinny magazine as well, because I just thought this is outrageous. The Skinny magazine had published an article about, was it Pride Month?
Yes, and your views on Pride.
And Cathy Brennan, which is not his real name, not his first name, he, oh gosh, am I just doing a hate crime here? I don't know. I mean, how the hell are we supposed to know? Anyway, this person, then he had put in the Skinny that it was okay to be violent to a TERF. I can't remember if he said punish a turf. I think that was in one of his tweets. So I didn't know this, but was going to come up today, but you just reminded me of it. And so I had got involved too, and quickly found myself getting attention. I don't do tit for tat on social media. On Facebook, I used to respond and discuss, but on Twitter, I am not going to get in to a tit for tat. For Pete's sake, it's like when we were kids playing in the street, and I didn't know, you did saw, I didn't know, you did saw, for Pete's sake. So I don't even indulge that. I don't think I've ever actually done that very much. But anyway, so things started to happen to me in my career. I mean, I already knew that there were people who didn't agree with me, and that's fine. Do you know something? I want a society where there are people who do not agree with me. If we don't have a society where we can't disagree freely, then it's a society not worth having. So I have no problem with that at all. And as I have said to other people, I know that there are people on my Facebook friends, and I know them in real life, who are, God, I'll get this one muddled up as well, who are pro-life and anti-abortion. I am not going to just throw them off my Facebook page or blank them when I meet them because they're holding a different political view from me. We are complex creatures. We are allowed different views, except that when it comes to this one thing, madness, no, suddenly we're not allowed to have different views. We become persona non grata. We also become anybody that wants to attack you, all the little-minded people that had to read grievances and crawl out the woodwork, and therefore a complaint was put into the Federation of Writers Scotland, which is an organisation for writers. That not just me, but myself and my husband, who's also a writer, would make any events that we attended an unsafe space. The accusation against my husband, who is a former stand-up comedian and now is writes comedy, was that he put on, he hardly tweets at all, so he put on one tweet which had a really good punchline to another comedian who was trying to claim that there were razor blades under turf stickers in Glasgow. Anyway, that was enough. He had a comedy workshop coming up that he was tutoring for them, and that was enough for the complaint going about him that the workshop was to be cancelled, and that, along the lines of, and everyone knows his wife, Magi Gibson, is a transphobe too. I mean, grown up stuff. So, anyway, the problem was in those days, several years ago, anything like the Federation of Writers were run by a volunteer committee, the same as what we had today as one month. They thought they had to take it seriously. I mean, I even spoke to my MP at the time, he thought they had to take it seriously. There's no question of even looking into whether it was a vexatious complaint, it was a complaint of transphobia, it had to be acted on. So suddenly, after 35 years at that point of working very hard in the literature, the writing and poetry sector in Scotland, not least with marginalised groups. I was one of the first writers in Scotland to be working extensively with the most marginalised groups and being seen as a very safe pair of hands. Suddenly, I'm not safe to be in a room with. I had to defend myself against that. I got investigated. My husband got investigated too. It was really stressful. Now, it's nothing like the level of stuff that Joe Phoenix has been through, but I'll tell you, when you've worked for 35 years, I know you've done a pretty good job of it, and a lot of that work has been voluntary. And then you're put under investigation. The clash in your head, and Shona Dillon had a piece in the Critic recently about this, and I was quoting, the clash in your head between who you think you are and who these people are not just telling you, are portraying to the outside world that you are, is not good for your mental health. So that was one of the most distressing things, and not least because years and years and years ago, I was asked to be a patron of the Federation of Writers Scotland, along with people like Caroline Duffy and Liz Lockhead. Suddenly, I'm persona non grata. To be fair, the Federation of Writers conducted it. They found that I was not guilty, amongst other things, because of course it was done, I think it was done in emails and the discussions, and everybody knows every committee is going to leak sooner or later. So I've seen some of the discussions, and apparently no one had actually witnessed me on social media saying that a trans woman is not a woman. It would appear that had I said that, it would have been taken further. Things have moved on a lot further for all of us though. And we now know about vexatious complaints. The complaint was anonymous, of course, but because committees leak, I don't find who it was. And it's someone who had been in one of my workshops in the past and used to credit me with having unblocked her creative writing blog. And she went on to win a major prize in Scotland. So no more than that. The she will get me into enough trouble. But then on the social, sorry, I won't take too long, on social media, to Glasgow Women's Library, got in touch after I'd had a couple of tweets go viral. The tweets were about something so basic, changing rooms and Topshop. You might remember that one. And I just can't, so this is so much sense. I mean, this is just sense. Of course trans people people who regard themselves as trans people must be accommodated. But do not take the accommodations for women away. There's no need to do both of those things. It's quite simple, really. And so I had a couple of tweets that went viral on the Thursday and Friday, I think. I'm pretty sure it was Monday morning. I get a phone call, an email from Glasgow Women's Library asking me if I can remove it from my Twitter handle, former reader in residence, Glasgow Women's Library. It was someone young, a volunteer, I think, who sent me that. I questioned it. I was told it was a new social media policy, that they were just wanting me to bring in line. They'd forgotten to get in touch with me before. I assisted speaking to one of the directors. I spoke to the director a few days later. I said to her, answer me straight. I said, I don't want any fluffing of this. Is this because I had a couple of tweets went viral at the end of last week? I said, have you had any complaints about me in the Glasgow Women's Library? And she said, well, yes. And she said, it's not fair on the young women at the reception. But it seems it was fair to ask an older woman to erase her personal history. So I said, Glasgow Women's Library, you are supposed to be about uncovering hidden women's histories, and you are asking me to erase my personal history here. I said, I am not going to do that at your request, and I'll think about it. I eventually did remove it because I didn't want associated with it anymore. There's so many things here. The Scottish Poetry Library. I'll leave that one for another day. Well, my books were hidden when I was part of an exhibition of Macca's. Artworks had been done of us, and by a wonderful artist. And then there was going to be an event in the library, so 6 of us were to read at the event. I happened to be in Edinburgh a few days before. I'm not often there. Went into the library. There was a table, a display with all the books by all the authors except mine. These things hurt. I've kept quiet about what hurt, as I said in the Show the Dawn piece, because I did not want to give anyone any idea that they were getting to me. But let's face it, that's not right, particularly because you feel powerless. Now, it may not have been staff at Scottish Poetry Library, but I knew there were staff at the Scottish Poetry Library who had huge problems. with me. And the director of the Scottish Poetry Library stood firm in just being fair to everyone, and I'm grateful to him for that. But that's the type of thing. And last summer, Liz Houchin will be at an event in the Poetry Library in March, the eve of International Women's Day. Liz was in Glasgow last summer, an Irish poet. Checked out first that there were copies of Wild Women of a Certain Age at Waterstones in, I think it was Sauchiehall Street. Called in, couldn't find them on the shelf, asked, told, no, we don't have any copies. She said, no, it says there are copies in this Waterstones. She was a guy, he tried again to fob her off, but Liz is a force of nature. And Liz said, I'll tell you what, I've got a few other things to do. You look in your back shop, and I'll come back in a couple of hours. Suddenly, he was able to go to the back shop and produce a copy of my poetry collection. These things are happening all over the place. It always seems to me when I'm saying, and this is back to Shirley Dillon was saying to the women minimising. Because I always think, it's not that big a deal, it's not that big a deal. But this is the stuff that's visible, and then there's all the stuff that you know is going on, which you hear about it through other news.
Yeah, so Scottish Poetry Library features quite prominently in my own hounding as well, but I'll just go back to that fateful night in 2019. What was always worst about the backlash I had from poets and writers instantly and overnight was that I think it was 4 or 5 days after Cathy Brennan had published that piece, and he then attempted to assault Julie Bindel outside the University of Edinburgh. And instead of saying, maybe Jenny had a good point there, my hounders, who included prominent award-winning novelists and poets, doubled down. And it got worse and worse and worse and worse. Now, I don't want to repeat stuff that I've said elsewhere. If anybody wants to know about my wonderful Christmas family story of the hounding, I was thankfully approached to write about it for a very prestigious literary magazine called The Dark Horse. And to be quite frank with you, I don't know where I'd be if I hadn't had that right of reply. Because one of the things, as Maggie says, is it's all these layers upon layers of what you might think of as small things, but once they build up, it's astonishing the effect on your mental and physical health, the stress, the uncertainty. Also in the arts, you're a freelancer, you're on your own, right? And it's a very competitive sector. For all the talk of writing communities, lots of folk are assholes. They're backstabbers, and they will attempt to ruin your life. And it was always very competitive. And this just, I think it offered the opportunity for so many people to, as Maggie says, use the issue to kind of put forward their grievances. But what it also did as well is it really contributed to a general cultural atmosphere of fear in the Scottish literary world, which had been there, I think, already for quite some time. But the amount of people, I'm sure Maggie will concur with this, the amount of writers and poets, some of whom are far more successful and well-known and financially secure than I will ever be, sending me private messages saying, I just want to say you're so brave and courageous, I really wish I could speak out, but I just can't. And I'm like, you think I could? I was a freelance poet who had lived on my own and was trying to pay private rent on a city centre flat. I couldn't afford to speak out either. And what I certainly couldn't afford is for people around me not to speak out. That's what I couldn't afford. And so Maggie and I were very isolated for quite some time. I mean, this is pre-Forstater, this is pre all of that. But just before lockdown was when things went pretty insane for me, and I'd been getting hounded for about 7 months by that point, during which time the Maya Forstater's original judgment had come in. Quite a lot of who would become my future hounders tweeted out things like, I can't wait to use this judgment against TERFs in the poetry world, and I was like, bloody hell. And sure enough, their chance came in February 2020, when an open letter against transphobia was sent to the Scottish Poetry Library, clearly referencing myself and Maggie, though as with other open letters, such as Suzanne Moore's, we weren't named, but it was obvious it was about us and the aforementioned Hannah McGill. And this letter, sure enough, which is still there, I don't know why they haven't taken it down, I'd be bloody embarrassed, but it uses the Forstater judgment that says you shouldn't support platforming gender critical poets because they don't have the beliefs that are worthy of respect in a democratic society. That judgment was used in so many women's hangdowns before it was overturned. And the thing is, I don't know why, but I get followed by a lot of arts journalists. I've been around for a long time in the Scottish art scene since I was about 20, and a lot of people were following this. So even though I don't have any bloody money, I do have some cultural clout. So we, managed to get picked up and the headlines and all the rest of it. Now the thing is that people don't understand about that is you might think, oh, that's publicity. Yay, Jenny's got publicity. The thing is, I was getting publicity from a hounding. I wasn't getting publicity from a work. Every time there's a headline saying Jenny Lindsay rocks trans poetry world, blah, 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 I lose another client. And every time that happens, because arts organisations need funding and they're fucking terrified. And so they look at people like Maggie or me and they say, we love what Maggie does, brilliant poet. Jenny, she's a great workshop facilitator. Like hell, are we going to give them any work because we're going to get little scroats sending us fucking complaints or slagging us off Twitter. And they do. In one of the most amusing instances of this happening to me, one of my hounders once sent a demand that I be fired from a workshop series directly into the Facebook inbox of an account that I manage. I'm one of 5 people who had access to it. So I saw the person and I knew they were one of my hounders. And I went, and the question was, hi, I just wanted to ask, are your workshops trans inclusive? And I was like, oh, right, here we go. And this was in 2021, I think it was, 2021. So even after I read this big, good, if I can pat myself on the back, I know it's illegal to kind of pat yourself on the back, but that was a fucking good essay I wrote. Anyway, yeah, it was. So even after my essay, even after lots of people go, God, it was terrible what happened to Jenny Lindsay, your hounders don't stop. They never, ever stop. Ever.
Well,
right?
At least because they're usually operating as if they're anonymous.
Yes.
I mean, that is a huge, huge problem.
Yeah, well, this woman, so that's actually a really good point. This woman demanded, so I passed it on to the director, obviously, said, look, you're going to have to handle this one. I can see it all coming in. They demanded that I be fired, and they also demanded that I not be told who was making the complaint. And I was like, she just sent it to me, It's like, which, I mean, hi, if you're watching, because I don't know if this person actually knows that they sent it to me. It's hilarious. But the thing is, the gaslighting is extraordinary, because even as all these things keep happening, poets and writers and hounders in the literary world in Scotland will say cancel culture doesn't exist. And I'm like, are you kidding me? A poetry collective, I found out only about 4 weeks ago, maybe a wee bit longer than that, has removed my final performance when I was resident of Edinburgh from their YouTube channel. And do you know why? The Folly View law, apparently, because I contacted them and said, I noticed you've removed the schism ring from your poetry YouTube channel. I just wanted to know why, and they said, oh, we don't have a problem with the content, though we have had lots of requests to remove it over the past few years, but we didn't feel that the way in which it was being shared was in line with our company's, with our organisation's values. It was being shared in contexts where it was being used against trans and gender questioning people, and I did reply and ripped them a new one, but they haven't replied to that. But I mean, it's disgraceful. That is direct erasure. This is a story as old as time. That's direct erasure of my performances, because this organisation has radicalised itself to the point where it no longer believes women are materially definable and legislatively and culturally important. It's fucking insane. But there are things, thankfully, you can do
And there's so much more that we could both say about things that have happened to us, and it came to Pictures Me at that point, March 2020 as well, just as we were going into lockdown. But Jen and I have made big efforts. We've supported each other, and we last year I was approached by a couple of women who, after Forth Valley Feminist Conference last year, where I had read some poems, and they said maybe I could do more stuff, maybe in Glasgow. So along with them, we organised Women Word last May, and Women Word was, and Elaine Miller, who I think is here, she was here earlier, yes, hi Elaine. Elaine Miller, so I kind of was the main person in contact, and I said, could Elaine and Jenny do it with me as well? They came on board with the prospects of no payment whatsoever. That's what I love about this movement, and this is actually, to be honest, is how I've been my whole life. If a thing needs done, you do it. If you get payment, great. But if you don't, it's worth doing.
I would quite like to get paid.
I would quite like to get paid there. Immediately said yes. I said, Jenny, I'm hoping I'll be able to cover your train fares up through there. And she came on board immediately. But yes, I would like to be paid too. And anyway, out of Woman Word, which some of you possibly were at, and they got attacked by some tedious people that I'm not even going to give a name to, but they're one of them playing sick and sing. And we got attacked. It kind of got blown out of proportion before we knew who we were, thanks to wonderful women like you and a few men as well. We were sold out, and our event was sold out, but it was very stressful because we didn't know if we had to get through, I was going to call it picket line there, but I won't give it the honour of that. We didn't know if we were going to have to batter our way through. Anyway, out of that, and out of Forth Valley Fund this last year when I announced it, last year I said I was going to bring out a collection of poetry by women, about womanhood, about many of the things we've been talking about today, and I did it. So, there was no point in going to, my own publisher has been great, Lewis in Edinburgh, through all of this. There was no point in going to a mainstream publisher to try and do a project like this. So it was all done, and this is what women have learned to do so well, it was all done under the radar. That doesn't go through bookshops because it would be too big a hassle, to be perfectly honest, and then chasing up lights in the back shop. And thanks to you women, it's paid its way, and I plan to do, it's called Unbridled, if you don't know it, and I'll be doing Unbridled 2 this year. Jenny was a great support through all this. I mean, in a way, we've kind of just fallen back on each other because, although as Jenny said, there'll be people who do very much support us, and we know we get the private messages in the wider poetry world. We have to actually just, in a way, do things ourselves.
I mean, the one thing left to Cancelled Women is the platform herself, which so I'm just going to sum up with what I've done and maybe a hint at future plans, and then Maggie's going to finish up with a couple of poems, I think.
If you might not have time for one.
Maybe just for one. We're currently we're just coming up to the end. But so what became very clear to me, and I don't want to take this as a defeatist response, but what became clear to me was that although I think this book, this script, my last poetry collection is so better than any of my other ones, I cannot make a living in the Scottish arts. But that's fine. I mean, it's not shit, but it doesn't mean that I can't keep writing and performing. But I was very reliant on cultural institutions in Scotland not to lose their minds and occasionally hire me to do things like workshops and talks and conferences and everything. So I did lose more than 2/3 of my income. So I'm not putting a shine onto the economic hardship of that. I have had to find other things to do. The reason I'm not telling you exactly what they are is probably quite clear. It's not because they're illegal. Anyway, but that doesn't mean that I can't keep platforming myself, and it doesn't mean that I can't keep platforming other people. So I've set up a new event series called Platformed, which is all about words and ideas. I've only done 2, they both sold out because, funnily enough, even though the arts is wetting itself over budget cuts and everything, looks like there is actually a market for feminist events, guys. Maybe you should look into it. I can't tell you exactly what the other thing is that I've made a decision about, but it turns out this bitch can write. So I am kind of taking a new direction with my writing as well. So might hear some more prose from me in the future. And
right, so Jenny has specifically asked me to do this poem, which will get me cancelled further. But you know, when I'm talking about being a woman, you'll know the poem, When I'm an Old Woman I Shall Wear Purple. And it is a lovely poem, but you do realise that woman has deferred her whole life from doing the things she wants to do. So this is my response, my version. When I am an old woman, I shall wear beige, a bloodless, weary colour. I'll let my hair turn grey and wispy as a winter's day. I'll keep myself to myself, flicking idly through my memories, chuckling at my wanton youth, the wildness of my middle years, the manic madness of my many marriages. When I am an old woman, I shall rarely go out in the rain for fear of shrinkage and sudden disappearance down a gushing drain. On dry days, I'll wrap up sensibly and venture forth to gather from my garden the lost footballs of the neighbours' children. Quietly and with dignity, I will stab them with my kitchen knife. When I am a tiny, twisted pretzel of a very old woman, I'll have a walking frame, a flowery cane, and a tartan shopping trolley. I'll make a game of tripping up young mothers with impossibly cheery, cherub-cheeked children. I will lean my hooked-nosed bird nest head into their prams and ooh and ah, and quietly nip the sleeping babes and tut my disapproval at their wailing. Oh really, I can't wait to be old. I'll wear big comfy knickers and wrinkly support tights and zimmer waltz past building sites, ogling the rippling muscles. I'll wolf whistle and shout, "Get out for the girls!" while I lurk safe beneath my magic cloak of ancient crone invisibility. I'll moan loud and long about wandering wombs when the bloke next to me on the train manspreads. I'll dunk my custard cream when the social worker calls, and if he's woke and beardy with a pronoun badge, I'll slurp my soup, witter winningly about my hot and messy multiple love affairs. Oh, and how hard it was back then, my dear. I'll patiently explain. One never knew if one was hetero, lesbian, or just plain bi. One simply had to try again. You young folk nowadays have it easy with all this gender fluid guff. We hippies only had free love. When I am a sprightly and antiquacious elderly lady with a hearing aid, I'll sprinkle my chat with bastard, fuck and funky cunt. Like glitter in a pride parade. I'll cheerily smoke pot, grass, weed, whatever comes my way and chomp my gums, but if ever that day comes when I want to wear purple, shove me in a home without delay and with my blessing throw the key away.